The Bleuite, sometimes called the Blue Plot, is a large-scale infiltration and intoxication operation, mounted by the STC French Secret Services during the Algerian War, from 1957, in response to the Bluebird affair. This operation, long unknown to the general public, both Algerian and French, consisted in drawing up lists of alleged Algerian collaborators of the French army and sending them to the leaders of the National Liberation Army ALN, the arm armed with the FLN, to provoke internal purges there. Mechanism. These lists were sent through various channels, including shipments of returned Algerians, dissemination of rumors in the villages and maquis of the wilayas, compromising documents left on down rebels. To understand how the virus of suspicion, later baptized Bleuite, was able to penetrate the Algerian Revolution, we must return to the Battle of Algiers. Former members of Yousef networks had decided to work with French paratroopers. It was an idea of Captain Paul-Alain, paratrooper, STC agent and head of the GRE Intelligence and Exploitation Group. He had proposed to his superior Colonel Godard to return former companions of Yousef. When an element of the FLN is identified and arrested, it is interrogated, compromised and trapped. He is offered to switch sides. Eller's capacities as a psychologist constitute the essence of the reversal process too. The former FLN thus joined the group dressed in overalls, hence the name Bleuite or Blue Plot. Originally, this group was made up of 70 men and their role was to denounce their former comrades from the clandestine networks, but also to try to turn the population in favor of the French. They circulated like this in the Kasbah, chatting with anyone who wanted to talk to them, trying to recognize in the crowd the men with whom they had been in contact. But their main role remained, of course, the infiltration of the still existing FLN networks. They allow the arrest of Yousef Souradrif in the location of the cache of Ali Lapointe in March 1958. This group numbered more than 300 men and women too, most of whom had Harki status. This intoxication operation was also at the origin of a campaign of devastating purges in all the wilayas, which caused more losses to the ALN and the FLN than the fighting itself, and provoked the rallying of many panic fighters to the French army, the only way to save their lives in the face of suspicions of treason, in particular in Wilaya led by Colonel Amarouche. The principle of compartmentalization in the ALN and the duty of discretion of the principals concerned aggravated the situation. Infiltrations of the FLN networks of the Autonomous Zone of Algiers, arrest of Yousef Saadi and the plasticization of Ali Lapointe's cache. The information collected by the GRE thanks to the techniques of the Bleuite led the parachutist Captain Eller to locate the famous hiding place of Ali Lapointe at 5, Rue des Abderrahmans in the Kasbah of Algiers. Ali Lapointe and his companions refused to return, surrounded by the parachute commandos of the famous 10th DP. General Machu orders his paratroopers to dynamite the cache. On October 9, 1957, this feat of arms marked the end of the Battle of Algiers. Photo taken on December 20, 2011. In September 1957, Aria, an FLN activist, was denounced by her husband who wanted to get rid of her. Arrested, she agrees to collaborate with the services of Captain Eller. Aria is put in contact with the captured militant, Haki Gendrik, alias Zarouk, head of Region 3 of the Algiers Zone, returned and secretly passed to Captain Eller's GRE. Zarouk sends Aria to hide at his wife's house, where she observes a man still accompanied by a 5-year-old girl. Followed, this man guides the French to his home, number 4 Rue Caton in the Kasbah. On September 23, the gendarmes of Algiers arrested a man named Jamal who, when questioned, claimed to have met the head of the Autonomous Zone of Algiers Zaa Yousef Saadi at Rue Caton. The cross-check leads Captain Eller to think that Yousef Saadi lives in this street. The next day, The street was cordoned off by the paratroopers of the 1st RAP under the command of Colonel Jean-Pierre and the Blue Heaters of Captain L.R. The building is searched, and Youssef Saudi is arrested there along with Zora Drif. The two prisoners are closely guarded by the 1st RAP, no contact with the outside, because Youssef and Zora are no longer unaware of Zarouk's double game. This double game must continue to put the GRE on the track of Ali Lapointe very quickly. Zarouk makes contact with Ali through an emergency mailbox. L.R. thus learns that Ali Lapointe has joined another cache, with Hasiba Ben Bouali, Petty Omar 12 years old, liaison officer and nephew of Youssef and Mahmoud, another liaison officer. Ali Lapointe has 4 full bombs on him and he wants Zarouk, who for him is still the military leader of the autonomous zone, to relaunch a wave of attacks. Slowly, L.R. resumes spinning the mail. It will take him 3 weeks to locate Ali Lapointe's hideout at 5 Rue des Abderrahmans in the Upper Kasbah. Ali surrounded with his accomplices. His refuge is plasticized by the 1st RAP. The huge explosion also kills 17 civilians in the neighborhood, including 4 girls aged 4 and 5. This operation marks the elimination of the main leaders of the FLN from the autonomous zone of Algiers and therefore the victory of the French army in the Battle of Algiers. When the Blues are forced to organize attacks in Algiers, the infiltration of the Blues into the FLN networks enabled Captain L.R. to control the mail exchange between Algiers and the wilayas. This is how he learns that a new team of Algerian fighters will be appointed to replace the one that has just been dismantled in the fall of 1957 and thus show his supporters that the rebellion is not dead. Some of his men, who pass themselves off as members of the FLN, go as far as Kabylie to testify to the reality of the contacts and the revolutionary sincerity of the letters. One of the GRE agents will play the role of head of the network and, as such, will receive for his men the weapons and explosives intended for the actions to come. Lieutenant Kamal, responsible for Zone 1 of Wilaya Western Kabylie, makes contact with Safi and Hani, who remain the only FLN authority in Algiers, having escaped the annihilation of the network since returned by Captain L.R. Amrouche therefore informs him that he wants to send him a batch of weapons of Czech origin to prepare attacks which should be perpetrated during the Christmas holidays. On November 12, Kamal signed a mission order to Hani authorizing him, on behalf of Wilaya 3rd, to represent the FLN and the ALN within the autonomous zone of Algiers. In reality, through this document, Captain L.R. became the true boss of the FLN in Algiers. Handling becomes more and more delicate every day. L.R. first recovers the small shipment of weapons consisting of 10 Czech submachine guns, 20 automatic pistols and a batch of grenades. On December 10, 1957, Hani went up to the Maquis in order to attend in person the Council of Wilaya chaired by Amrouche. Back in Algiers, he immediately reports on his mission to Captain L.R. Events are rushing. The heads of Wilaya are getting impatient. They do not understand the inaction of Algiers. The messages sent to the ZAA are increasingly imperative. Attacks must take place. Kamal writes, the people of Algiers want to hear the explosions of your grenades, which are for them the indisputable sign that the heart of the capital is still beating. The war staff communicated the following order. In Algiers, let us order renewed attacks before the UN. It's formal. You will start before the 30th. L.R. always tries to temporize. In the meantime, he sends back a letter that he wants full of anxiety. The Maquis does not realize the enormous difficulties the organization has to face in Algiers. The enthusiasm of the beginnings no longer exists. The danger of infiltration by the Blues is too great to be overlooked. Investigations take a long time to determine the good faith of activists who are too often frightened. Hani was summoned again at the end of December 1957 to the headquarters of Wilaya. Kamal orders him to take action and announces to him that he will soon be able to have a shipment of particularly deadly bombs. made with bodies of 60 mm and 81 mm mortar shells, and that these are waiting for him in Tizi-Ouzou. Captain Eller launches a commando on Tizi-Ouzou. The men quickly recover the prepared bombs and take prisoner Lieutenant Houssine, political leader of Zone 1, and Lieutenant Sabri, intelligence officer. Eller fears that Bleuite will set up a parallel organization in Algiers that would escape him. It is therefore better to organize a few minor attacks than to return to the dramatic days when bombs exploded in the middle of the crowd. He knows well that the press will jump on the event and make its headlines and provide effective propaganda that will delight the men of Bleuite III. On January 1, 1958, as if to show the precariousness of the situation, a grenade exploded at the beginning of the evening of the staircase of 21 Rue Al-Mopis. This attack brings Algiers back to reality. In the Kasbah, the Arabic telephone peddles the news at lightning speed. Everyone is unaware that the grenade launcher is none other than Captain Eller. This one, in agreement with Colonel Godard, organizes some specific actions intended to make noise without there being victims. Godard had given this advice to his deputy, before leaving him: try not to do too much damage. Do not go harder than the fouls themselves. Infiltration and intoxication of Bleuite III of Colonel Amarouche. From January 1958, Captain Paul-Alain Eller's GRE prepared a new operation called KJ-27. Which proved particularly effective and had dramatic consequences in the ranks of the combatants of Bleuite and Kabylie and for the whole of Algeria by eliminating a generation of executives. Tajer Zora, known as Rosa, a young Algerian militant of the FLN, residing in Maison-Car El Harak, was arrested in January 1958 by the GRE in Bourdj Mina El. Reason for her arrest: she had made an FLN flag. Captain Eller offered to work with his intelligence and operations group ERG, which she accepted. However, in the captain's opinion, she accepted too quickly, because this kind of mission he offered her was out of proportion to what she was accused of. He took her back to Algiers, but on the way back, he managed to take her around a bit, so that we could see her in his car. To test it, he brings it to his office at home, in his villa in El Biar. The captain had prepared the ground because he suspected something. She asked too many questions. He sets up a little scene. In the middle of the discussion, he is called on the phone by his boss. He hastens to go there, leaving on his desk forged letters signed by an FLN leader who wrote to him from the Marquis of Bleuite. Through the half-open door, the captain was watching the girl, who got up and went to look at the letters. She read the letters and the signatures. At the end of the interview, Rosa promises to come back and give the captain some information. As planned, she leaves Algiers and goes directly to the Marquis of Bleuite III, in order to denounce the traitors whose names she had read in the captain's office. When she arrived at the Marquis, she came across a man called Ahce Mayas, nicknamed Hack-e-la Torture, a former Gestapo 3 collaborator at the rank of captain, head of Zone 1 of Bleuite and assistant to Colonel Amarouche. Mayas questioned him. "We saw you with Eller in his car." "Of course. He arrested me. He offered to work for him. I accepted." "You betrayed us." Stung, Rosa explained that she was going back to the Marquis to make important revelations. "Before you accuse me, you better look around you. You are surrounded by traitors in the pay of Algiers." The machine was on. Rosa recounted what she believed she had learned in Captain Ledger's office. When she had finished, Mayas wanted more. Rosa, tortured, her chest heaving in spasmodic gasps, muttered incoherent words. At a sign from Mayus, a secretary put his fingers on the typewriter. Mad with pain, she said nonsense. She first accused herself of being responsible for the arrest, in Algiers, of Jamila Bouhayr, Jamila Bouaza, Sora Drif and Youssef Sai, arrests for which she received, she said, the sum of 50,000 francs. She then confessed to having gone into the Maquis in order to contact officials in the Pays of El who would allow her to reach Tunis, where she had a very important mission to fulfill. It was the confirmation of what he thought: all these intellectuals, all those who came from Algiers, all these scholars, were traitors for Mayas. There followed a long confession in which the poor girl gave the names of Maquis officials, friends and even members of her family. One of her cousins from Bourg Jamina lost her life. Rosa, dying, was finally slaughtered. AHCE Mayas is worried. He proceeds to the arrest of all the men designated by Rosa. Rosa had just triggered a real tidal wave in all the wilayas. It is the most formidable campaign of purges ever known in the ranks of the FLN. From now on, to the dangers of the operations was to be added for the combatants the terror of the purge. Amrouche is now convinced that he is surrounded by traitors and spies in the pay of the French army. It had become his obsession. The purges and methods he advocated were worthy of Stalinist terror. The witch hunt was, according to Amrouche, to extend to all of Algeria. Obsessed by this obsession with spying, one of the most feared leaders of the FLN paralyzed by these preventive measures all the activity of his wilaya and established the reign of suspicion, denunciation and terror. Even operations against the French army had practically ceased. Morale had never been lower. Never the rallying of the more numerous French. Amrouche also specifies that the traitors are above all educated people, intellectuals, students, college students, doctors and teachers were the first targets. He wrote to the heads of the other wilayas on August 3, 1958. I discovered plots in my area, but there are ramifications in all the wilayas. We must take measures and amputate all these gangrenous limbs, otherwise we will die. I have the duty to inform you, praying to God that this message reaches you in time, of the discovery in our wilaya of a vast plot hatched for many months by the French services Colonel Godard and Captain Eller against the Algerian Revolution. Thank God all danger is now averted, as we acted very quickly and energetically. From the first indications, draconian measures were taken at the same time: stoppage of recruitment and control of people already recruited, arrest of Goumiers and soldiers who had deserted, arrest of all Junud soldiers from Algiers, arrest of all the suspects, of all the denounced persons of whatever rank, and energetic interrogation of those whose situation did not seem very regular. The network woven in our wilaya has just been practically out of harm's way after an investigation of all the more arduous as its leaders were apparently above all suspicion. Signed Colonel Amrouche. By an open letter to Colonel Godard, Colonel Amrouche addressed him to let him know that he had discovered the alleged plot, which amounted to announcing triumphantly that he had fallen into the trap. This letter, interesting in more ways than one, unexpectedly testifies to the respect that the officers of the ALN feel for a French officer. Their notions of the honor of a French officer are such that Amrouche is scandalized that Godard, whom he believes to be the architect of the alleged counter-revolutionary plot, and who is, in fact, the author of an enterprise still more subtle, resorts to such torturous means. Instead of going to fight loyally against the real mujahideen, you, Godard, who claim to be an officer, you preferred to work in the shadows. You renounced your job as a combatant to embrace the profession of cop. Yes, Colonel Godard, you were born, brought up and raised in the patriotic love of a civilized and even civilizing nation. You were destined to play an ever-growing role in the army by exposing your life, your chests to the bullets of the Germans, or of any other nation, at least equal to yours, which would declare war on you. Until the day you joined the colonialist army, I have nothing to reproach you for, given your zeal and your love for your country by serving it in honor and glory. and by all appropriate means you have just lowered your honor to that of a simple informer in the service of a handful of colonialists. This work would be honored if it were in France, in your own country, that you agreed to cleanse your nation of elements such as the fifth column. Before the 1940 war, the leaders of the DSP and its subdivisions in France can tomorrow be respected, honored and glorified great leaders, because they collaborate in the greatness of their nation. But you, Colonel Godard, what are you doing in this gallery of ultra-rebels to your own country, you who were born and brought up in the principles of the 1789 revolution? You are sullying the honor of a career already beautiful. Signed, Colonel Amourouche. The ordeal of the helicopter AHC Emmaus had set in motion a terrible spiral in Wilaya. Third, chain torture had given unexpected results. With his deputy Ajad Rashid, assisted by a group of mountaineers persuaded to purify the revolution, they created an atmosphere of oppressive suspicion in each zone. As early as August 1958, Emmaus had established a thick dossier stuffed with evidence against some 50 executives who had all confessed to their relations with the French Special Services. Everyone, whatever their rank, had been interrogated by Emmaus, who had applied the torture of the helicopter to them. The naked man had his feet and hands tied and joined together by a rope that was hung on a branch. The body in an ark was then hoisted 50 centimeters above the ground, then loaded with 40 or 50 kilos of stones. Emmaus then placed under the oscillating body a canoe, a kind of barbecue on which a jaunty soldier poured cold water. The man, his muscles shattered, his bones cracking, breathed in this burning vapor which attacked either the face and the lungs, or the lower abdomen. Under torture, the men gave the names of their closest companions. It was enough for the name of the guerrillas to be pronounced by 2 or 3 men interrogated for him to be charged and interrogated in turn. 6 out of 10 suspects died during interrogations. There were hundreds, if not thousands of victims, mostly innocent of the charges against them. Summary of losses attributed to Bleuite for Wilaya Kabylie for the whole of 1958. The estimates concerning the number of liquidations vary between 2,000 and 6,000, figure given by Mohammed Ben Yahya and unverifiable ref necessary due to the lack of reliable documents. Amourouche took with him in March 1959 a partial count which reported, out of 542 people tried, 54 released, 152 sentenced to death and 336 died during interrogations, including 30 officers, that is 488 deaths. The document was presumably intended to downplay the extent of the purges from the GPRA. According to Yves Carré, the executions only ceased a few days before Operation Jumels. In 1959, AHC Emmaus had provided Amourouche with more than 3,000 death sentences, that is 3,000 young people, almost all of whom had at least their school certificate. According to certain journalists who investigated this period, the number of condemned would be lower and the estimates would be 1,200 to 2,000 or even 4,000. Workforce of the Wilaya. The extermination of the young Algiers intelligentsia. Emmaus's bloodthirsty madness knew no bounds when the Algiers Putsch of May 13, 1958 took place. In general, and the people of Algiers in particular, taking advantage of the opportunity, hundreds of cadres and Junud escaped death by rallying to the nearest French post. Among the victims of the purge in Wilaya, there will be several dozen high-ranking officers, former chief medical officers, pharmacists, former students and medical aspirants, executives of the UGTA, college students from the College of Benanoun, several graduates, teachers, radio technicians, a young 27-year-old director and a team of screenwriters. According to the declaration of a political lieutenant, AK rallied near Bouga-Aix-Lafayette on April 6, 1958 to escape death. On this date the massacre of intellectuals had lasted for 16 months. However, having returned to Kabylie in July 1957 after a 6-month absence abroad, Amourouche would have noticed a deterioration, concomitant with the massive arrival of educated young people who had come to the Maquis after the student strike decreed at the end of May 1956, city dwellers disembarked from Algiers after the 8-day strike in January 1957 during the Battle of Algiers, and former members of the MTLD reconverted within the MNA and then transferred to the FLN. The French Second Bureau noted, "It is materially impossible for the adversary to replace all these losses with personnel of the same value without taking into account the moral factor. The fall in the potential and intrinsic value of the executives of the political administrative organization OPA is certain." A more distant consequence was the loss of these young intellectuals for independent Algeria. Assessment of losses in the rest of the wilayas. Wilaya I, 2,000 dead. Wilaya II, 500 dead. Wilaya IV, 1,500 dead. Wilaya V, 500 dead too. Captain Eller later said, "Certain good souls, no doubt regretting the great rides and fiery battles under the sun, will claim that this is an underground war unworthy of warriors. I personally think that if the enemy has special dispositions to destroy himself, very guilty would be the one who does not take advantage of it."